First off, starting with Islam and Christianity, or Islam and Judaism rather, is there any middle ground? Is there any hope that those who are committed to one faith can bridge the gap with the other?
Well, I think when you talk about Muslims and Jews, there's no doubt about the fact that there are significant similarities in terms of the basic faith. In fact, I would say and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, in their very simplicity in the way that they understand God and God's nature. That God is one. Well, Christians say that, but then Christians move into the Trinity. The way in which in both faiths the primary expression of the faith is through law. It's kind of practical. What does it mean to be an observant Jew? What does it mean to be an observant Muslim? Then you address it. You lay it out through law. And historically, in fact, Muslims and Jews have gotten along together a lot better than Christians and Jews, ever had. The issue is when you get into the political issue of the state of Israel and the Palestinians, and that colors, regrettably, the whole scene. It colors the whole scene because, not just because you do have some people who are religious players, even though this is primarily, a majority of the forces are more, if you will, nationalist, and secular nationalist, but it also, colors it in terms of the way it plays out, for example, in the Muslim world, and also often in the popular mind. For many people, they see it as Muslims and Jews fighting and killing each other, as if it's driven by faith, when in fact, the majority of it, as, for example, in Northern Ireland, and the conflict between Protestants and Catholics, has to do with issues of land, has to do with issues that are political and socioeconomic.
You mentioned that, the faiths are similar, but they're not identical. So if you have some who hold to the philosophy of, we have this on promise from God, yet at the same time you have Jerusalem being one of Islam's 3 most holy sites outside of Mecca and Medina, that to me, just from an outsider, looks like there is no middle ground.
It's got to be in a secular democratic state. And I think that if one could marginalize what I regard as the more extremist voices, that is what I would call your sort of right-wing, more militant type Zionist position, often a kind of religious fundamentalist position. If you could marginalize that side, as well as marginalize those who would, on a Palestinian side, make a religious claim and go with the more mainstream in both communities, then I think you could have a political resolution. But regrettably, the religion card will be played.
Isn't it the nature of religion that compromise is kind of left out? Or is the door is kind of shut on it because if you are a quote-unquote true believer, then you can't compromise that belief in order to bridge a gap with somebody who doesn't believe like you do?
Today we live in a world of multiple modernities. That's part of the challenge. Multiple, not a single model of modernity, but multiple. And what that's going to mean, and I think it's going to be reflected in the Arab Spring. Depending on the country, it will vary. It's going to mean states where religion plays a role, but states that are democratic and defining that kind of relationship. So, for example, if you look at Turkey, the AK party, which is in power, is a kind of Muslim party, but it is a party that recognizes a secularism and basically says that unlike previous forms of secularism in Turkey, which are actually marginalized religion and were anti-religious, they basically say they want something akin to what we have in America. Secularism means space for religious folk, but also for non-believers, but that there's space for religion. Not necessarily in the official institutions, but in society. Other countries will adapt themselves differently, in Egypt and other places. If you look at the young people in Egypt and Tunisia, they were not pushing for a theocracy, they're not pushing for a religious state. It was a diverse group of people who want to see a democratic state. But religion and cultural concerns will have to be absorbed. So we'll have to develop alternative notions, it seems to me, of the modern state.